Some people buy luxury cars to show off, but for me it was survival. I'd spent years grinding through 12-hour shifts, clawing my way out of debt, fighting tooth and nail for a life that didn't feel like slow suffocation. When the day finally came, I signed the papers with a shaking hand and whispered promise to myself, before I die, I will own something that reminds me I fought my way here. A promise materialized in the form of a matte black McLaren, sleek, low, and alive. In a way, few machines ever are. To call it a car was insulting. This thing was sculpture on wheels, a shadow in motion. It wasn't just the engine roar or the glossy carbon fiber curves. It was the way I felt when I looked at it. Machine represented every sleepless night, every compromise, every broken back morning that brought me to the point where I could finally say, I made it. Some people meditate, others journal. I just needed to sit behind the wheel and hear that engine rumble. That was my therapy. The neighborhood I'd chosen seemed like the perfect stage for my quiet victory. Gated community, lush hedges trimmed to military precision, neighbors who prided themselves more on green lawns than conversation. It's a kind of place where stillness hung in the air, broken only by sprinklers clicking at dawn. I thought I'd bought myself peace. And at first, it seemed true. The McLaren sat in the driveway like a panther at rest, drawing the occasional double take from delivery guys, but nothing more. But peace doesn't last long when envy festers in quiet corners. I should have known. You don't put a dream machine in the middle of people who have given up on theirs without stirring something dark in them. At first, it was the stairs. A few neighbors whispering while walking their dogs. Then it was the passive-aggressive smiles, the too long glances at the car as if it were an uninvited guest. Still, I brushed it off. The first real sign came as a letter. Tucked under my wiper, folded crookedly, like whoever placed it there was trembling with either rage or self-importance. I pulled it free, unfolded it, and laughed out loud in my driveway. Scrawled across the page in jagged handwriting, Your car is a threat to our community. It is far too fast, intimidating to children, and violates the spirit of peaceful living. You have 2 weeks to remove it before further action is taken. No HOA letterhead, no polite phrasing, just venom. I snapped a photo of it and filed it away in my phone under a folder I'd labeled HOA Clowns. Surely this had to be some joke. I wasn't speeding. The handbook said nothing about banned vehicles. This was America, not some backwater dictatorship. That's when I learned the name Randall. He wasn't on the board. He wasn't law enforcement. He wasn't even particularly liked, from what Denise across the street later told me. He was just Randall. Middle-aged, balding, with the kind of cheap neon vest you buy from a gas station. In a badge he clearly printed off some website. A man starved of authority who decided to crown himself HOA cop. I ignored the first note, thinking it would blow over. But then day 15 arrived, a morning that should have been like any other. Stepped outside, coffee steaming. In my mug, sunlight spilling over the cul-de-sac, and froze. My McLaren, the dream, the trophy, the therapy, was destroyed. Not a scratch, not a ding, destroyed. Windows smashed to shards, tires shredded like ribbons. Paint scoured down to raw metal as if someone had taken a belt sander to its skin. It looked like the aftermath of a riot, and I just stood there, the mug slipping in my grip, disbelief choking me. Denise appeared at my side, her eyes wide, her voice a frantic whisper. I saw Randall out here last night. With the landscaping guy, they were messing with your car. I thought it was weird. Weird. This wasn't weird. This was war. But instead of rage, I felt a cold smile curl at the edge of my mouth. Because what Randall didn't know was that my porch light wasn't just a porch light. Inside, hidden, was a camera, a perfect, unblinking witness. And as I walked back in, sat down at my desk, and pulled up the footage, I saw it all. Randall in his vest, fake badge flashing, hammer in hand, smashing my McLaren while ranting about neighborhood safety. That was the moment I picked up my phone, dialed my lawyer, and realized Randall had no idea the nightmare he just bought himself. The footage was damning, so damning, I didn't even need to narrate it. Randall in his neon vest, pounding dents into my McLaren with the conviction of a zealot. Every swing of his hammer carried the weight of a man desperate to matter, to carve authority where none was given. He wasn't just destroying a car, he was declaring war on reality itself, pretending his paper-thin badge made him king of the cul-de-sac. I didn't shout. I didn't storm across the street. I didn't even march over and drag him by the collar, though every nerve in my body begged for it. Instead, I called my lawyer. Cool, calm, deliberate. Because while Randall lived for drama in driveways, I lived for victories in courtrooms. When I sent the video over, my lawyer's laugh nearly shook the speakerphone. "What is this guy? Discount mall cop?" asked between chuckles. "Seriously, though, this is felony-level property damage. You're looking at 6 figures in? Repairs, forward everything to the police. We'll let the law chew him up." I did exactly that. But Randall wasn't about to slink into silence. The very next morning, a pounding knock rattled my front door. Not polite, not frantic. The kind of knock reserved for men who believe the world owes them obedience. I opened the door and there he stood, in full costume. Neon vest zipped to the throat, his oversized sunglasses hiding his eyes. Clipboard clutched like a judge's gavel. He jabbed a finger at me as if punctuating his importance. "You've ignored official HOA directives," he barked. "Your car endangered this neighborhood. I have the right to enforce action. Consider. Yourself fined?" I nearly choked on my coffee. Fined? By who? The HOA handbook had rules about lawn heights and trash bins, but nothing about exotic cars. And Randall, he wasn't even on the board. He was a nobody with printer paper authority. "You're not law enforcement," I said flatly. His jaw clenched. "I am law enforcement for this community. If you don't like it, leave." That's when I decided to twist the knife. I leaned against the doorway, let my smile spread slow. "Funny," I said, "because I've got video proof of you committing felony vandalism. So unless you're planning on enforcing that on yourself, I'd suggest you back off." For a fraction of a second, color drained from his face. He knew. He knew then, like a child caught lying. He doubled down. He muttered something about calling the board and stormed off, shoulders stiff with false bravado. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Emergency HOA meeting. Attendance mandatory. I almost laughed. Randall wasn't just stupid, he was theatrical. So I went. Inside the clubhouse, the board sat at a folding table, faces drawn. At the center was Marka, the HOA president, a woman with the kind of diplomatic smile that usually smoothed over lawn disputes. Beside her, Randall sat like a loyal bulldog, his vest glowing under fluorescent lights. "Let's be reasonable," Marka began. "Randall was acting in the community's best interest. Perhaps the damage to your vehicle was excessive," but I cut her off. "No, there's no perhaps. He destroyed private property. My property. And you're defending him." One of the quieter board members shifted uncomfortably, cleared his throat. "Technically, Randall doesn't serve on the board. He volunteers. That single word hung in the air like smoke. So not only did this maniac destroy a $250,000 car, but the HOA never even gave him authority to begin with. He was nothing, a pretender, a fraud. I made 2 decisions right then. 1. Let the police handle Randall. 2. Let my lawyer handle the HOA for defending him. Because now, it wasn't just about a carit, it was about an entire community enabling a fraud. And when the cops finally rolled up to my driveway that week, after watching the footage themselves, they didn't hesitate. Randall was cuffed right there on the pavement, his fake badge dangling, his voice screeching about conspiracies. The neighborhood kids laughed as he was shoved into the back of the cruiser, chanting his name like it was a punchline. I thought it was over, but Randall's nightmare was only just beginning. The day Randall was hauled off in cuffs should have been a victory lap for me. My McLaren was totaled, yes, but justice was in motion. Watching him sputter about being framed while children laughed and pointed felt like a scene ripped out of a dark comedy. The self-appointed sheriff of suburbia, dethroned on his own asphalt. But Randall wasn't the kind of man to disappear. Quietly, he came back louder, more desperate, his ego refusing to accept reality. And that was perfect because every desperate step he took only tightened the noose around his own neck. My lawyer wasted no time. He filed a stack of charges that read like a death sentence for Randall's reputation. Felony vandalism, impersonating an officer, criminal mischief. The impersonation charge was especially brutal. Dressing up in fake badges and neon vests might seem pathetic, but in court it carried weight. Transformed Randall's clown act into a criminal performance. And now, the stage was the courtroom. The day of the hearing, I sat in the back, calm as stone. Randall walked in with that same swagger, the vest replaced by a wrinkled dress shirt that looked borrowed, hair combed neat. As if appearances could erase evidence. His lawyer, a frazzled man flipping through a stack of loose papers, looked like he'd been dragged into the case against his will. When the footage played, the room went silent except for Randall's own voice echoing through the speakers. "This car endangers the neighborhood," he bellowed on screen, hammer raised, before slamming it down on the McLaren's hood. His fake badge glinted under the porch light camera, making him look less like an enforcer and more like a parody. The judge removed his glasses, pinched the bridge of his nose, and sighed. "Sir, not only were you not authorized by this HOA, you destroyed property worth more than most homes in this county. You're looking at prison time." Randall's lawyer scrambled, arguing about community safety and good intentions. But the board didn't even show up to support him. That silence was deafening. Randall, once parading as their protector, was now their liability. But the fallout didn't stop with Randall. As word spread, homeowners dug deeper and discovered the truth. The board had knowingly allowed Randall to parade around in fake authority, even encouraging him when it suited their interests. They hadn't stopped him. They hadn't corrected him. They'd enabled him. That revelation hit the neighborhood like wildfire. Petitions flew door to door. Heated conversations erupted on sidewalks. By the end of the month, the board was dissolved completely. The HOA, once the puppet master behind every blade of grass, was dead. Randall stood alone, exposed and rotting in his own arrogance. The court ordered him to pay restitution for the McLaren damages for impersonating authority and my legal fees. It was more than he had. Within weeks, his job was gone. His finances collapsed. His house went into foreclosure. And then came the humiliation. He didn't move away. No, Randall rented a small place across town. But shame doesn't fade with a change of address. Couldn't set foot in the neighborhood without smirks chasing him. Drivers rolled down their windows, smirking, careful, Randall might ticket you. Kids whispered his name like a ghost story. As for me, a brand new McLaren gleamed in my driveway, a phoenix born from Randall's ashes. Every time I slid into the driver's seat, I felt a satisfaction deeper than speed. Randall had tried to erase my dream and ended up erasing himself. But here's the twist. His downfall didn't end with the courtroom or the HOA's collapse. No, the true punishment was far more intimate. Randall had wanted authority. What he got was infamy. His neon vest had made him visible. Now it made him unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. And as I stood on my porch one evening, coffee in hand, I spotted him across the street, head down, hoodie pulled tight. He didn't dare look my way. The man who once knocked like a sheriff now slinked like a shadow. That was justice, not just legal, not just financial, social, eternal. Do you want me to keep this momentum rolling into Section 4 right away? Said. Finish story in Section 4-5, chat, said. Section 4, you'd think Randall's humiliation would have ended with the court's gavel, but men like him rarely learn quietly. Prison time loomed, restitution drained his bank account, and the HOA board his imagined kingdom was dissolved. Yet still he clawed for control, muttering about conspiracies, telling anyone who'd listen that I was the villain, that I had framed him with edited footage. The thing about paranoia is, it spreads until people start laughing, and laugh they did. At the grocery store, the gas stations, even at the post office, where a clerk once whispered loud enough for Randall to hear, "There goes Officer Randall, better watch your speed." The neon vest became legend. Neighbors dressed as him for Halloween, teenagers taped dollar store, badges to their shirts, and marched through the cul-de-sac shouting, "HOA patrol!" The image of Randall the Enforcer, the destroyer of McLarens, became a living meme, and he hated it. Every joke stripped another layer of dignity until he was raw with shame. Meanwhile, I savored the quiet. My new McLaren rested in the driveway like nothing had ever happened. The same neighbors who once whispered about my car now defended it like a neighborhood treasure. They'd seen the fallout, seen what blind envy did to a man, and they wanted no part of it. But Randall wasn't done suffering. The impersonation. Charge carried community service on top of restitution. His sentence: sweeping parking lots and picking up trash in a neon vest almost identical to the one he'd once worn with pride. Irony doesn't always strike, but when it does, it strikes hard. I drove past him one Saturday morning, the McLaren purring as Randall hunched over a trash bag on the side of the road. He froze, recognizing the sound before even turning.
Ow.
Eyes met. For the first time, there was no fire in his glare, just hollow resignation. He'd been broken, not by me, not by the law, but by his own obsession with control. I didn't honk, didn't wave, didn't gloat. I simply drove on, leaving him in the exhaust trail of the life he had tried so hard to destroy. But the story didn't just belong to us anymore. It had become a cautionary tale, whispered at block parties and family dinners. Parents used it as a lesson. This is what happens when you let envy rule your life. Randall became the neighborhood ghost story, a warning about pride and power in the wrong hands. And deep down, I knew the punishment wasn't just about a ruined car or a failed wannabe cop. It was about a truth every neighborhood eventually learns. Authority isn't something you can print off the internet. It has to be earned. Randall never earned it. That was why he lost everything. Section 5 months passed. Seasons changed. The cul-de-sac grew quieter, almost serene again. The HOA was gone, replaced by a looser community agreement, where neighbors handled disputes like adults. Without the constant hum of petty power struggles, the air felt lighter. Even Denise admitted she felt safer, now not from crime, but from Randall's obsession with control. My McLaren became more than a car again. It was a symbol, a reminder that resilience outlasts envy. I'd walk out in the mornings, coffee in hand, and watch the sunrise glint across its hood. Victory didn't roar in my ears anymore. It hummed. In the calm, Randall, however, remained a shell. Bankrupt, jobless, living in a cramped rental across town. I'd see him occasionally, shoulders slumped, hoodie drawn tight. The man who once pounded on my door like a sheriff now crossed the street to avoid eye contact. The neon vest never resurfaced. It had become his scarlet letter, a relic of his collapse. Neighbors still joked, of course. "Careful, Randall might fine you," they'd say, when someone parked too close to a mailbox. But the laughter was no longer cruel, it was dismissive, the way you laugh about an old nightmare once it loses its teeth. And me? I realized something profound. It wasn't about the car. It wasn't even about Randall. It was about refusing to bow when someone tried to wield false authority over my life. That fight wasn't unique to Maya as a battle, everyone. Faces in one form or another. Some boss, some bored, some petty enforcer who mistakes power for purpose. As I stood on my porch one evening, sipping coffee while the McLaren's glossy paint reflected the setting sun, I thought about Randall's story. You can dress like a cop, act like a cop, even scream like a cop. But the moment you pick a fight with someone ready to fight back, you regret it instantly. Randall regretted it, every single day. And I didn't have to lift a finger after the first swing of his hammer. His envy carried him straight to ruin, so was justice served. To me, absolutely. He didn't just lose a case, he lost his kingdom of delusion. And in this neighborhood, that was worth more than any verdict, because while my McLaren gleamed, Randall faded. And some stains like neon vests and fake badges never wash off.